we scaled our monthly agency revenue 28 times from December to June. We did it with zero client churn over 2 full years with Perspective and Meta ads. In this podcast, I'm going to be sharing the funnel and exactly how we do it, breaking it down, sharing screen, so that you can copy it step by step and create one of these monster funnels for yourself.
If you want to get the same results as Jude, head over to the link in the description down below and get yourself an extended free trial of 30 days. How did you actually scale so dramatically by 28 times in just 5 months? That's the main question that I have for you, Jude.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of contributing factors. I think so. We joined a coaching program and we got quite a lot of really helpful advice. The main thing was around restructuring our offer. So we were already niched into solar at that point, but we were offering everything. We were doing websites, CRM
Right.
builds, automations, all this stuff, right? And we had just discovered Perspective. Before then, maybe in September time, we were using lead forms. So, if that was December, we started to move to Perspective, and our client results shot up through the roof. Solar came out of winter, and solar performs better in spring and summer. So we were riding that wave. And then Joe and I'd say the core thing was that Joe and I really fell into our roles. So I fell really well into sales and marketing, and Joe fell into operations and fulfillment. When before, both of us were on the sales calls, and it was really hard.
Okay.
I'd be like negotiating, and I'd kind of look at Joe and I'd be like, should we say yes? Should we say yes? And we kind of fell into what we actually did best, right?
Super interesting. And let me maybe take a segue in here. So Joe, that's your co-founder, right?
Correct. Yeah. He's the brains of the operation.
Now he's the brains of the operation. Now you're the marketing guy, the guy that's on the podcast.
Correct.
But what's your origin story? How did you come about actually starting the business with Joe?
Yeah, so we actually went to school together. So we've known each other since we were 10 years old.
Oh, man.
And yeah, so we had the trust all there. Like we knew each other very well. We went to different universities, went full time on our own separate businesses, and then came together. He was on the ad side, I was on the website side. It's no surprise to say we now do the ads more than the websites because he was way better than I was. But that was kind of how it came about, essentially.
Right. And so you started Solar on Steroids last year, or was it before that?
We incorporated last July. Yeah, so we're coming up to a full year incorporated. Yeah.
So you've not even incorporated for a full year, and you already managed to 20x your monthly revenue from December to basically right now. June.
Yeah,
that's exceptional.
It's been pretty fast, yeah.
And all that while, and that's by the way something that I found on your LinkedIn. In 2 years, you haven't lost a single client.
Correct.
Is that still the case?
Yes. Absolutely, and I love to sing about it. Yeah, for sure.
So what's the secret to scaling so rapidly and still maintaining zero churn? That's exceptional.
Yeah. I think there's a couple foundational pieces. So there's some really simple stuff and just like rules that we have in the business. So we don't sign anyone that we don't fundamentally believe we can get results for. There are businesses that we can't help, and we accept that. And that is how we help the businesses that we choose to help so well. The second piece is we really narrowed our service offering. So we just got very, very good at one specific thing. Whereas before, we probably had, this whole thing that we were trying to offer all this different stuff, when in reality, it was only maybe 20% of it that was really getting people results. And we just decided, okay, let's get rid of the other 80%. Let's hone in, really get good at what we do. And then it's kind of just stemmed from there. Like, you don't really lose clients if you're getting results for people. You're honest about your process and your procedures, and they get on with you as people. So I suppose that's how we've done it, really. And fingers crossed we can keep that going.
Amazing. So dial down on the ICP, dial down on the offer. And so I'm super curious, because before it seems like if you were offering essentially 5 times more in your offer and you weren't really dialing down your customer profile, they must have been doing a lot of different things. So if you were to compare your previous workflow to how your day looks right now, what are the key differences between working as this chaotic agency versus this more productized one right now?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't say it's calm right now. It's still a bit chaotic, but certainly less than it was before. We were offering websites and CRM builds and all of this really quite complex stuff that you really have to understand and get deep into an individual client, rather than actually thinking about how can we improve our systems and our processes so that every client in this space we can help just the same. And that was the kind of key shift in how we approach things. What I will add as well, because I think it would be unfair not to, is that Joe Garber, my co-founder, is just a machine at ads. So it became very clear that the real
Right.
highest value, quickest method for us to get results with someone was to run ads for them. And then it was a case of, okay, we want to do ads. Facebook ads have got a really bad rep for low quality, low intent. So how do we overcome that with various different methods, right? To get better quality leads in the solar market, essentially.
So how do your ads stand out then?
Yeah,
What's the
so we
sauce? What's the
very
secret
much
sauce?
yeah. There's a few different things. So obviously solar is quite high ticket, and the UK solar market in particular has gone through a really big like boom and bust cycle. So it will be really good some years, really bad some other years. And what that causes is lots of new players come into the industry, and a lot of them have potentially bad intentions. Or they
Hmm.
want to capture a boom, but they don't necessarily have the infrastructure to deal with it. So the market started to get a bit tainted, and therefore trust really eroded in the space. And there's other industries this has happened to, like cryptocurrency, maybe Windows, double glazing, etc. So the real thing for us was how can we put trust back into the consumers? And for us, that was through video ads. So we would actually go out to shoot with the installer. We would bring a professional videographer. I mean, at the start we used iPhones, but eventually a videographer.
Yep.
And we would bring their personality to life on camera and really try to highlight actually what was great about their service and how they offered their service rather than just a price or an offer or a sale, um, and really focus on getting those higher caliber customers really. And then the second piece to it would be how we actually convert the traffic, right? So you've got the ads that are building trust, rapport. They're not offer focused necessarily. They're more focused on the service and the quality. So how do you convert that traffic into high quality leads? So we
Right.
started with lead forms, and
Yep.
then we moved from a lead forms to a landing page because the lead forms were terrible quality because people just autofill them. Like they quite often can autofill information they gave Facebook like 10 years ago, right? So it just leads to awful quality. We moved from that to a landing page that was built on Framer. And when Joe hears this, he will think back to the dark days where our Framer landing pages would just break out of nowhere, and
Okay.
we would have issues with conversion, and we were running at like 1% conversion rate, right? So
Oh
really
man.
poor. But the quality was amazing. So we fixed one problem and then came into a new problem. And then finally, we discovered Perspective, obviously, and that gave us all of the benefits of the landing page in that it gave us qualification, it gave us high quality leads and the ability to convert them, and didn't allow people to autofill the information from Facebook. But it also gave us the conversion rate and the kind of frictionless appeal that the lead forms gave us originally. So you combine both best of both worlds, and then it was just like boom, because all of our problems were gone in terms of converting these leads, and that I would say was a huge factor in getting that growth because the results just went through the roof.
That's amazing. And so
Mhm.
from 1%, right now, do you know your average
Correct.
conversion rate?
We average around 6 or 7%. We have
Yeah.
some clients that are a bit higher,
Wow.
some clients a bit lower. Yeah, yeah. So six or
All
seven
else
times
being equal,
increase.
6 to 7 times.
Well, I'd say we've actually increased the qualification. So even more questions and 6 or 7 times higher conversion rate.
And so to the qualification point, maybe.
Mhm.
So in the solar industry, like just to break it down, because it's a pretty particular industry, as you said, right? Which has got a
Yeah.
bad rep because of the whole like broader industry events going on and impacting how it was perceived.
Yes.
So you basically, and please correct me if I'm wrong at any point, basically turned this more like offer style ads
Yeah.
positioning angle into basically building trust with the ads themselves. And then for
Correct.
whoever is actually interested enough from the trust itself to click on it, to then make effort to then qualify them, and and then what? And then what happens in your funnel?
Yeah, so it's quite simple. On the thank you page, we have the ability for someone to call the client straight away, which we do get some people do. They've just entered their information. It's the best time to just say like skip the queue, give us a call.
Right.
We also just send automatically, staying true to our strategy on video, we send them a video via WhatsApp afterwards as well. And that just goes straight through and it's a nice touch point between the back end and the ad that they engaged with. and it's normally the same person that was in the ad on the WhatsApp video. But to be honest, that's quite it's quite simple. We don't use AI chatbots. We don't use anything like that because we're very much focused on portraying the local bespoke feel of the installer, right?
Right. It seems like there's a big part of this brand building, both for you
Yes.
on behalf of your clients, right? And also for yourself so that your clients would come to you.
Yeah,
How would you
that's
say
exactly
this
it.
whole brand building has been impacting how you've been able to acquire clients over the last couple of months?
Um, I think yeah, it's super interesting because
Maybe
I
just
think
to
we
add
did
a bit more
ourselves.
context, maybe just to add a little bit more context, you've been super active on LinkedIn recently, both
Yeah,
posting text, but especially putting a lot of videos, like pretty much every other day
yeah.
or every single day, you're putting like a 5 minute video. How has that impacted your
Yeah,
client acquisition?
so I posted a daily LinkedIn video in a landscape format, very much talking head to camera, between 5 and 15 minutes, every day for 45 days, including Christmas Day. And I
Wow.
didn't pre-record a single one of them. So every day on the dot, I would either do it in the morning, or it would get to 11 o'clock at night, and I would be like, "Oh my god, I didn't record my video yet." And so I made it a rule until basically our operations broke. We had so many sales calls from that video spree that Joe basically turned around and said to me like, "Jude, can you give it a rest? Like, stop posting on LinkedIn," because it
Damn.
was just too much for us to handle. Recently, we've kind of been able to put the systems in place to deal with that kind of demand, and therefore I've started putting out the videos again. But as soon as I have, we've now had to basically implement a waitlist because there is just too much demand for what we're offering, and that's coming almost entirely from LinkedIn, really.
So you do have a wait list and you are putting a lot of effort to actually pick the clients that you want to work with. So you're in
That's
the
right.
like this perfect position to scale further, right?
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, we're very lucky. We are able to pick essentially the clients that we genuinely believe we're going to get the best results for. I think a lot of agencies potentially mess up at the start because there's like a scarcity mindset to, if anyone shows an ounce of interest, you're like, I've got to work with them, I've got to increase my MRR, I've got to do this and that. But if you don't genuinely believe you can help them, you're never going to get the case studies that's going to fuel the growth anyway. So
Right.
you have to be kind of like quite um, methodical and intentional about who you work with because there's plenty of people that we've turned down working with that I'm not sure we would have got results for, and that's on us to basically have the responsibilities to say I'm really sorry, we don't want to do it.
So maybe to that point, what are the characteristics of the solar companies that can actually
Yeah,
deliver results for?
that's, I suppose, one of the reasons we really double down on LinkedIn as well, because that ties into those characteristics. So we were looking for installers that are doing kind of over 4 installations a month. We want to take something that's already working and add fuel to the fire rather than starting something from scratch necessarily. There's only a few people that we've taken on that break those characteristics, and they have to have basically they have to be exceptional cases, maybe prior industry experience or something like that. And that ties in well with LinkedIn because anyone that's doing more than 4 installations a month, they start to have a team in place. And as soon as you start to have a team, you then start to bring maybe more active on LinkedIn, have your team members on LinkedIn. And therefore, we found that the caliber of client on average was really, really high on LinkedIn. And you're working with businesses that have already got the CRM in place, they've already got the sales processes in place, and they just need more leads and they've got everything ready to deal with them. Whereas if you start with someone that's starting really from scratch, or maybe they've got bad reviews, they don't have the trust element in the first place, all of our efforts are basically going to go into a leaky bucket, and it's not going to work, right?
It sounds like you're just finding someone who's already flowing with the current and just weeding out
Yes,
the
that's
people
it.
who wouldn't be going against. Really, it's that simple.
It's that
Right.
simple. Yeah, like, and again, that's why so many people I think mess up at the start because you are fighting against the current yourself, but you have to wait and be patient to find the people that genuinely will really benefit from your services. But you've hit the nail on the head. It's going with the current, I think.
It's super interesting, and it's also super cool to be talking to you right now as you're at this like brink, like this precipice, right? You're about to properly take off. You've
Fingers
been doing it
crossed.
for the last couple of months. But what's like the longer story for how long you've been doing marketing, how long you've been doing the agency lifestyle? What's the roots of Solar and Steroids?
Yeah, so I basically was developing websites using Framer while I was at university. and Joe was running ads on a freelance basis while he was at university, at separate universities. And we
Right.
both went full time upon graduating university. And that was in May 2023. We both started our own separate agencies. And essentially, I got to a point where my bottleneck was fulfillment. I could sell quite well, and the websites were selling, but I couldn't fulfill it, and I struggled to scale the team up. Joe got to the bottleneck where it was primarily the sales and marketing, but his fulfillment was really good. And the team, his ability to hire was great and all this stuff. So it became like this really natural merge together, especially when you consider the fact that most people build a website. And, I'd like to think that my websites were absolutely fantastic. So they've then got the problem I need traffic on this website. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's not going to do anything. Um, Joe runs ads. He brings traffic to said website, and vice versa. Joe is running ads that aren't converting. I then make a website that then converts the ads better. And it was then that we started to realize the synergies. But really, it was Joe's skills on the ads side that we wanted to take forward further. We still build the odd website, but it's certainly more so like, if someone's getting fantastic results from the Facebook ads and they want to reinvest that with us, then we'll put the team together to build the website, but the focus is very much the Facebook ads.
Right. So that would be this scrappy offer, which would be both the website and the ads. Okay, that would be
You're
the
right.
initial months running the agency.
Yes.
Right. So obviously that was when was it exactly in 2023? The spring 2023? Did you say?
Yeah.
Yes. So since then, it's basically been 2 full years. What would be the key advice, everything now, knowing everything that you know right now, that you would have given to yourself 2 years ago, just starting out with Joe?
I think we've done a really good job of holding to our values, and it's quite difficult because I mean
What
I
are they?
remember in what are they? The values.
Yeah.
Our values are primarily just being really honest, accountable, and putting the results first. So, like revenue wise, yeah, we've had 28x growth in 6 months, but profit wise, we certainly haven't had 28x growth, right? It has not gone like that, but that's
Yeah.
because we care so much about the results. And, I mean, we've had instances where we've made really big mistakes, right? So, we had once where we duplicated one of our perspective funnels, because that's our process and all of our clients use a very similar funnel structure, and we forgot to change the webhook in the funnel. So we launched with this
Oh.
client and the leads are going to the wrong client, and obviously major issue. It fortunately we caught it like that because we were really hot on that early launch of the campaign, but you kind of are in a situation where you're like, oh my goodness, do they know like what's going on? And Joe and I immediately, it's easy. You don't have to think about the decision because you think, okay, what are my values? And you just go back to your values and think, okay, my values are honesty, integrity, accountability. I admit when I mess up and I try and do better. So I'll just tell the client exactly what's gone on and we'll fix it. And we did just that. And the client said, oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, thanks for telling us. And if we'd have let that kind of simmer, then all of a sudden you've got all this anxiety about making a mistake, and everyone makes mistakes. So I think that's what I would say. I would say that I'm thankful that we kept to those values, and we still do, and we only take on people we get results for. I think if I could go back, I would also at the time, it felt like a mistake, but in hindsight, it actually wasn't with our original offer. So, our original
Mm.
offer, we actually covered the advertising spend for the client, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's
And
risky.
we took on 6 clients doing that. And we were running up basically, we were on track to in November spend 18,000 a month on their ads, not our ads, their ads. Okay.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
we joined this coaching program and got lots of advice, and we basically segued out of that offer to a different pricing structure. And at the time I was, oh my goodness, I could have gone so much faster if we'd have just had a simple offer at the start and not done this crazy thing with covering advertising spend. But actually in hindsight I look back, and because we were covering advertising spend, we had full responsibility and like ability to make changes like this, like bang 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 bang. And because it was our money, we weren't doing it on behalf of the client. We didn't need to ask permission. We just basically made a change like that. Boom. And that's how we moved so quickly from Framer landing pages to Perspective. Because
Mm.
if the client was covering the ad spend, it might have been way more hard because we would have had to say, oh, we think this is a good idea. We might move to here. We've got to do a test. We're going to move 25% of the traffic, blah, blah, blah. But instead, we just said, this is it, go. And we just moved everything straight to perspective and it worked like that. And that was how we were able to take those kind of big risks to get that big trajectory, I guess.
That's so cool. And one theme exactly in that which you just said, which is you had the capability, you had like you didn't even need to have their trust, but you were basically able to sell an
Mm,
idea so instantly. You're like, well, just moving right over there, and they're like, yeah, cool, because obviously it's your ad spend. But usually
exactly, because
that's
we were taking the risk.
and then hopefully also part of kind of the pie, right, of the reward if you are successful. And for that part though, which is actually getting, this seems to be like talking to so many people, talking to so many agency owners, seems to be one of primary pain points for agency owners themselves, the part of actually managing the client and selling them on every single idea on why we should do it this way. And this entire thing like circling around trust, right? You've been super transparent. You're like, hey guys, this is how we messed up, and this
Yeah.
is like, this is what it is. We're gonna fix it this way, and you're just building that trust. You're also building trust on behalf of them because that's your kind of angle, right? That's your positioning. Like, hey guys,
Yes.
this industry is quite hard. Now we're gonna come out there and say like, hey, this is exactly how we do things. So if you listen to us, like, it's just how it is, right? So you're building this wider pie of trust, if you could call it this way. But in like looking at that from what you said right now is you've got this trust built, you've got the ability to basically sell them on a whim, and now you're able to move a little bit faster. How's that whole thing with actually selling them on different ideas, selling your clients on different ideas, working out across all of your client portfolio, not just with this one that you're covering ad spend for?
I think we're very data driven. So when we make a suggestion, we always like it to be backed up by data or some sort of insight that gives us that, jurisdiction to make that put that idea forward. So one thing is, for example, we run the same A/B test for all of our client perspective funnels at once. So not only are we getting the A/B test data for one client, but we're getting it for 25, 30 clients at once. And so each client is actually benefiting from the insights and data from maybe 30 times as much ad spend as they spend individually. So actually, when we
Right.
put these decisions forward, quite often they're backed by pretty undisputable data. The second angle to this is I do think that specializing in one niche has been massive for this because if we every time we took on a new client, we had to learn that industry, I don't think we'd be able to make suggestions with the same conviction that we are today. Whereas because we're specialized in solar, I mean, I've seen the insides of 50 solar businesses. I know what
Yeah.
is working, I know what isn't, I know how they sell, how they offer. So when you've got that quite niche knowledge and expertise, people I think trust and respect your suggestions a whole lot more. And I think that's played a big factor.
How would you say your trust went over time with all of these clients as you've been able to work with more solar businesses? How's the curve looking like?
Yeah, I think essentially it's just a very linear progression between the results we get and the trust they have for us. So we've got clients that have started with us 3 months ago and they're on track to make £500,000 in revenue directly off of our efforts. We've got
Amazing.
clients that are getting an average deal value of £15,000 from Facebook ads, which, to give context on the UK solar market, the average is probably about 8,500 in like across the board.
That's
From Facebook,
crazy.
it's probably even lower. Yeah, so our clients are getting almost double the average deal value because of this approach that's built on trust and rapport. So I think it just comes from the results. I don't think you can expect the trust before you deliver and before you've got
Right.
substance, and you have to fight that uphill battle until you do get those results and can showcase that, right?
No silver bullet. No golden BBs. No silver
Unfortunately,
bullets.
not.
Just yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Funny.
no silver bullets. But again, that's why we covered the ad spend initially because we were like, okay, what's the fastest route to actually learn and get to the point where we can deliver results for someone that's paying us directly, rather than us
Right.
covering all of the risk, right?
And you already did all of your due diligence because we were already screening all of these clients in the beginning as well, right? Or did it also come
Yes.
come over time that you started screening them?
Yeah, no, definitely still screening. I mean, probably the first 3 discovery calls I had, I think I turned at least one person down, just on the basis that we had a pretty good idea of what we were looking for. I mean, it sounds really clever, but really we were just looking for a business that already was really trusted. So you're looking at Google reviews, Trustpilot reviews, because then you know you've already got all these people that trust this business that you can ask for the video reviews we collect, and that genuinely that just the installer is going to do a really good job, because then you feel very confident in advertising them in that way because you know that they've already delivered for hundreds of people, right?
Oh man, this is also cool. I'm learning so much both about your approach, which is just quite unique. I don't hear that many people being so drilled and like so focused as you are. Like 2 years, was that the only niche that you've ever worked with, or did it come about trying with a few different ones and then like down solar? It was always
Nope.
solar.
Always solo. Yeah, straight
How did it come
into
about?
solo. Yeah, I mean, literally straight in, named it soloronsteroids.com. We were gutted for it, right? There was no deliberation. I think a lot of people get caught up on finding the right niche, right? Everyone thinks that there is the right niche. And I remember back in the day, I was watching videos of, the tier lists where people rank niches and things like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like, sure, yeah, there are some elements, like for example, there in hindsight there were some really good things about solar that we picked, right? So high ticket price, the deal values are quite large. If we were to run ads for a cafe, they might really struggle to make a return on investment for that because the
yeah.
deal values are so low. um, the second thing is it's a growing industry, and because it booms and busts quite a bit, people actually have either a very extreme need for lead generation or for hiring, one of the two. So it
Super interesting.
ties in perfectly to perspective, actually, because that's the two core kind of avatar sets, right, of the software. um and then finally, it's got to be something that I think you're passionate about, and I think you develop the passion over time. We didn't know it was going to be solar at the start. We decided on it, and I love the technology. I think it's great that we can have an impact beyond ourselves and beyond our clients, in terms of like the environment sustainability. But I think by just investing in the space, in the niche, you do grow to love it even more. We love this industry now, and we love helping the really good actors get even better and kind of take sales away from the potentially some of the bad actors in the space. So yeah, I think it comes over time, but I don't think people should get so hung up on deciding which rather than just deciding to have one.
And you pick that and you stick with it, and you basically changed up your offer a couple of times, and 2 years later you've been working with, or you had previously worked with, like 50 different companies right now, and
Yeah,
you've
I've
got all of that experience.
Yeah, so we've
Go
got
ahead.
30 active clients right now, but I've probably
30 active
seen,
clients.
yeah, seen the insides of maybe 50 businesses in the discovery process, and kind of like, even some that I've kind of maybe turned away.
That's incredible. How many solar businesses are there in the UK?
There's technically just over 5,000 that are registered with the accreditation you need to have, to install solar. However, I would say a large portion of those aren't the caliber that we would want to work with. There's probably about 3 to 500 that we'd actually really want to work with that do a stellar job every time,
Oh
right?
wow. So you got like 10% of your market, of your niche,
Essentially,
really.
maybe even more, in all honesty, of the people we'd really want to work with. Yeah.
Is there any big competitor that you're aware of in your space that you're kind of fighting against right now?
I wouldn't say competition, but there's definitely other specialists. There you
Alright,
go.
other specialists. Very
I
good.
mean, I'll put it this way: we've never lost a client, and
Right.
those other specialists certainly have lost clients from us. Now, that won't be the case forever, but I would love to think that, we can keep that going for as long as possible, basically by continuing to try and go above and beyond for our clients, basically.
I've been doing so for 2 years, and it's, well, none of them have churned so far. You've been able to grow massively. It
Yeah.
seems like, at least from what I'm hearing or how I'm feeling it, you're starting to build some sort of like a competitive moat around you, just because you're
Yeah,
putting
it's a
yourself
great
out there
point.
so much.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because we were definitely first mover in our market in a lot of ways. We were the first to introduce real video ads to the market. Everyone previously was using kind of Canva templates. We were the first to introduce perspective. we were the first to introduce what we do, where we encourage our clients' customers to record a video review, but not sticking a big camera in someone's face and kind of like
Yeah.
pointing a gun behind it, actually recording it just using their phone. So that
Okay.
was quite unique. And what we're finding is that unfortunately, that first mover advantage is starting to be eroded by people seeing what we're doing and starting to catch on. But
Right.
we just need to innovate more and keep innovating, stay ahead. We've got some really good ideas coming, and just got to keep the results coming basically for all our clients.
Maybe let's take a quick dive into these ads because that's also super interesting. Something that we've ourselves been actually dabbling in, just getting some of the UGC kind of content, getting it out there,
Yes.
low quality, and kind of plays into that game of trust. How would you say
Yeah.
in general video ads perform against any static ones in your experience?
So in our experience, it's pretty simple. The static ads will get you a cheaper cost per click and a cheaper cost per lead. In our experience, the video ads will get you a better cost per acquisition. So
Mm,
it's about what you're actually targeting. You know, a lot of agencies like to look good because they can say they got really cheap leads, they got £1 leads, £2 leads. But in reality, if none of them are closing, it doesn't matter. It's just wasted ad spend. So we focus much more on cost per acquisition. You know, I could give you 2,000 leads for a pound and none of them close, or I could give you one for £100 that does, and you'd prefer the one with £100 cost per lead. So that was always our approach. We don't want to look good ourselves. We want our client to actually make money and get results, right? So that would be the difference for static and video for me. Basically, better leads video, but a bit more expensive.
so in your campaigns, are you just putting video ads because you're running meta ads, right? Is it just video all
Yeah,
the time,
just
or are you somehow splitting it?
we've got a few images in there that quite often just kind of like churn up more volume for the client. But we always make sure the videos are in there, especially from a retargeting perspective, because we found that it's not just about the lead generation when you're running meta ads, it's about the nurturing and actually the conversion of the sale. So a lot of people think that the job is done once the lead is generated, but in reality, especially with the kind of UGC video review strategy, with the rapport focused ads with the installer, a big part of that is actually helping the lead close. You know, taking it from becoming a lead to actually booking an in-person survey, which is how most solar sales are done, where you go and visit the home to sell,
Hmm. Yeah,
or to consult and advise, and then finally to actually agree to get that system installed. So the videos actually play just as important a role in encouraging someone to go ahead than they do encouraging someone to just give their details. Right. And I don't think images do that as well.
okay, so video for retargeting. Very interesting.
Correct.
Very interesting. And something you mentioned here, and that's very particular to your niche, to your industry, to solar. I'd be super curious to hear like what's the end user journey? Because I assume it would be somewhat similar across all
Mhm.
your clients. Or is that roughly right? That there would be kind of similar customer profiles for your clients.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's
with
very similar. So
with your ads, how would their journey look like from the time they first see your client's ad to the moment they convert and actually deposit money in your client's account?
yeah, of course. So they would first see the client's ad, that would very much be focused on providing some sort of value, educating them, building rapport, showing quality of service. They would click that, they'd go through to a prospective funnel. And once they complete their information into the prospective funnel, we would send them an automated video via WhatsApp that just basically introduces the installer. The installer would then call the lead and essentially look to, if they're qualified, look to book them in for an in person survey. And from that in person survey, they would present a quote for the system to be installed and then go ahead and actually get that installed if the prospect agrees. That's basically the customer journey. Yeah.
That's the entire process. And do you would you be fine sharing any of the files they're
Yeah.
using? Because that would be something that we could potentially give away to someone in the solar industry who maybe wants to do it themselves, or maybe they can see
Yeah,
that they
absolutely.
need to do some proper ads and they can call you up, whatever they choose to do.
Yeah, for sure. So this is our eighth variant of our funnel, and the reason
Eighth
I've got
variant.
I've got a pretty horrible amount of tabs open is that you'll see that we run this funnel for pretty much every single client in the same format and the same structure, and that is very much intentional because we like to basically assimilate the data from all of the different funnels that we've got running to give individual clients far more insights than they would have on their own ad spend. So we might have 30 clients that are running this exact same A/B test, and right now we're testing between
This is
very
brilliant.
simple change. You can almost see that nothing almost changes. So testing just this variant, and then for version B, just testing adding social proof above the fold. And you guys run really fantastic mastermind sessions. So we actually had our funnel analyzed in the Slack and in the call.
Mm.
And this was something that you suggested, and we're running this right now to see how it's performing. So yeah, it's kind of, it's very simple. It's almost hard to dissect it because you make so many changes over time that you forget kind of exactly which changes you've made, right? So one thing was adding this image. We like to use an image that basically says the client's main selling point if we can. So for most of our clients, that is someone installing and looking really happy and smiley. Okay. It's, something if I go across, we've got people smiling next to the solar panels, right? Other clients, it might be a beautiful installation that they've done, or it might be the fact that they've got 20 vans showcasing their scale, right? And
Yeah.
how they can deliver these services across the country. So we're trying to bring the USP in there. A huge other piece is we want to make it as easy as possible to get someone started on this funnel. So a lot of people will put the contact page, so a page like this or the request for contact details on the first page. But as soon as someone lands on that, they see 3 or 4 fields they have to complete, and there's very high friction. So in order to get the start rate as high as possible, we make it so easy. And we actually found we got something like a 40% increase in start rate just by starting by asking, "Do you own your home?" instead of asking, "What
Wow.
service are you looking for?" Like a crazy difference from a tiny change, seemingly. But what we found was a lot of people that were seeing this question weren't instantly sure of the answer. They had to think. They saw all of this and they were, oh, maybe it's helped me decide. But someone said that I should get a battery, but maybe I do want a solar and battery. I need someone to help me with that. And drop off just like that because they don't know the answer immediately. Whereas you ask
Right.
someone, "Do you own your home?" and you'd hope they know the answer pretty immediately, right?
Yeah. And then they
So
follow
there you
through.
go.
If they click on the first one, if they actually make a mindless, well, almost mindless, very easy to answer question.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So someone clicks yes or no. If they click no, that they don't own the home, we just basically check that that was the answer they really wanted to give. If they
Yep.
click yes, they come through to what are you looking for. In fact, I'll go in the preview mode. What are you looking for? Then it'll ask them what appeals to you the most. And our installers love all of this information because when they get on that first phone call, they can say, instead of focusing really heavily on saving money, this person in particular might want to help the environment more than that. How much do you spend on energy per year? What's your postcode? Um, Anything else to share? So this question in particular is really interesting. So we get almost no drop off on this question at all, but one third to maybe even as much as a half of the leads will give additional information on what they're looking for. And
Right.
that information is like gold dust because they might say, "Oh, I'm comparing Duracell Energy versus Hanchu, which are different battery brands, or I've got an east-west roof." And while we're not asking a ton of questions before then, that gives the installer so much information that they can use in that first phone call. Um, and then finally, it's just the contact information there, and we kind of bring in some of the answers from the previous questions to just personalize that a little bit.
Amazing, Jude. And these funnels you're saying are converting roughly at 6, 7%.
Roughly on average, if I go to the stats on this one here, we can have a quick look. So, our last 7 days, we've got 3.9% average here. And this is what's really interesting, right? So, I kind of wish I didn't show the stats first, but you would have thought that adding the social proof would have increased conversion, right? So, we've got A with no social proof and then B with the social proof here. So, any marketer like me is going to go, the social proof is a no brainer. We should definitely add it. It's definitely going to increase conversion. Why on earth would it not work? And
Yep.
then you go to the metrics, and the other one, the one without social proof, actually worked better, 5.1% rather than 3.42. Right? So our test adding the
Incredible.
social proof seems to have actually decreased conversion rate. And why is that? I have no idea. But
Yeah.
it, the data has to speak, right? So, um, what we found is you have to just test everything because otherwise you're going to make assumptions that may be really well intentioned, but they're actually going to hurt conversion rate. The only other thing I'd say, which confuses matters way more, is that if you look at this across the entire board and you look at every client's funnel, we're running the exact same tests with this client. However, are the results the same?
No.
Let's have a quick look. Probably not. So, with this one, the social
Oh
proof
wow.
increased conversion by about 25%. So, what does this mean? Because all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, I can't make a decision. Blah, blah, blah. Like, there's no conclusion. What we have to do is take the data from all of the funnels across the board and take the averages and medians of all of them. So, because it's a relatively limited number of visits for this one client, but when you add up all the visits for all of the clients, it's actually really, really high. So you can actually get far more confident results in the data. So across the board, we might see that the social proof on average increased conversion rate by 0.5%. And therefore, we can be pretty confident because there's so much data that it is actually a good call
Right.
to do. Whereas if any individual client was doing this, they might see the result that this client got and think, oh, the social proof doesn't work. When in reality, if they'd just tested it for way longer, it would have done. So it's a really difficult one. And that's where being niche down as well really helps because you get to make these kind of like broader, higher level decisions,
You're
right?
selling me so heavily on the productized route, and I hope that any agency owner that's not doing this yet, that has a productized offer and a similar client profile, I hope that's the one thing that they're gonna take away and just test the same thing across a broader spectrum. Because all that's gonna do is, first of all, increase your trust because your process is more scientific than anybody else's. You're literally
Yeah.
testing the same thing across different use cases. But also, like, you're gonna have better performance if you do it. So,
Yes, that's
like,
it, and that's why we're on our eighth test, right? I think when we started, we were at about 3% on average, and I think now we're about 5, 6, 7% average. So, yeah, and the frustrating thing is some of the tests you do will hurt the conversion rate, and you have to accept that. You have to accept that not every test is going to boost it up. We've had probably three tests. We're probably as successful at hurting the conversion rate as we are as at increasing it. But the important thing is over time it is going in the right direction.
how do you keep track of how do you keep track of all of these different tests? Do you have like a spreadsheet, a Google Doc, like Notion in your
Yeah,
mind?
we it all runs into Airtable. So every
Oh,
single lead
okay.
that's generated goes straight into an Airtable database. It is then tagged to the ad that generated it so that we can see the actual revenue that each ad generates rather than just cost per lead. It's tagged to the funnel that it came through and, of course, the start page. So it will be tagged to either A or B here. And then obviously it will be tagged to V8 as well, which is why we've got V8 in the name. It uses like a lookup in the Airtable, and then I can quite quickly see a list of all the conversion rates, the start rates, and actually the revenue generated by each funnel variant for the client, which is pretty cool.
And that's what 2 years of being focused on getting one offer extremely right for one ICP gets you to. And you're getting all of that data working with over 30 clients. None of them has churned. This
Correct.
is a crazy case study basically that you've created for yourself. That's so amazing to hear. And
Thank you.
slowly transitioning into okay, that's been the last 2 years. Where what is the future of solar and steroids in the next 12, 18 months?
Of course. I think over the last 5 or 6 months, we've got very good at optimizing, but we have not innovated as much as we did at the start when we were covering advertising spend. And I think there's a big difference. I would class optimization as continually just getting better and better and better, and innovation as doing something completely new that just absolutely takes it to a whole nother level. And we want to keep innovating. So we're going to be kind of offering our services to kind of parallel niches. So heat pumps is a really good example that's really growing quite well in the UK, and this approach is very tailored for that. But more importantly, we're not satisfied. So we are going to be on the hunt for something new, something clever, something interesting, and to basically take it to the next level. and give that for free to all of our clients just to take the results up a notch, rather than upselling it or anything like that. That's going to be the main thing for us, just continuing to put results first, I think.
True to your values, true to how you've got so far, got here so far. That's absolutely amazing, amazing to hear. And look, Jude, before we tie off the podcast, there's a few rapid fire questions I want to ask you. So, are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
So, jumping in, what's the best business advice that you've ever got?
Best business advice that I ever got is I've actually got a banner on my wall that says nobody cares, work harder, because essentially, it's just all about taking accountability and just taking action. I think uncertainty and anxiety comes from inaction. So just take action. Just start basically.
You've been doing that a lot, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, from everything that you've told me to everything that you've showed me, it's like the just getting the volume up. That's basically been
Yeah.
that's the steroids they're putting on solar, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
Amazing. Next one marketing trend they're betting on.
One marketing trend that I'm betting on would definitely be creativity. I think that the actual execution of marketing, of advertising campaigns, of everything else is going to be very much overtaken and taken up by AI. So I think it's the creatives of the world that are needed to actually keep the campaigns different. And AI by definition is trained on information. So really, it's not really creating anything that's particularly new, or original, at least right now. Whereas the creatives can utilize AI to basically stand above it and to leverage it rather than kind of getting swept up into the noise. You see it with AI content already, like people that produce content that comes straight out of GPT, you immediately switch off because it's just not engaging, it's not creative, it's not new. So I think it's going to be the trend is basically double down on using AI to execute, but using your brain to come up with the ideas.
And we'll see that play out definitely in the next couple of years.
For sure.
Another one, Jude. What's something that's widely considered as true in the marketing world that you strongly disagree with? What's your contrarian take, in other words?
Easy. One thing that's very widely considered as true is that as a marketing agency, your churn rate or your average client life cycle should be 3 or 4 months. And I think that is
Mm.
the most ridiculous advice I've ever heard, because essentially what that is saying is that you sign someone as a client, and just at the time that they realize if you're good or not, they basically leave. And I just think that we've gone completely against that, and I think that maybe even we are too obsessive about not churning anyone. But I would far rather be that side of the equation than losing every client after 3 months, because basically as soon as they figure out what you offer, they leave. I think it's the most ridiculous advice I've ever heard.
Incredible. And how do you prevent it?
You prevent it by essentially just getting good results. Like it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. I mean, it amuses me because it's like you're a marketing agency that doesn't know how to market. You shouldn't be selling your service for a price that is going to cause the client uncomfortability if you're not going to get results. Either go in, do it entirely on commission, cover their ad spend, do something crazy, work for free until you are confident enough that you can actually get enough about an industry, enough about a process that you can actually get someone results. And at that point, you will just go like this because you've done all the groundwork, and then it's just a case of kind of collecting what you've sown. Whereas so many people get so caught up in, oh, I've got to do all this outreach, I've got to sign this many clients, I've got to do all this or this, and they just don't know what they're even offering at that point. I think that's the biggest thing I would advise. Do it for yourself as well. Generate leads for yourself. Generate business for yourself. And yeah, that's basically it. Just actually provide a good product.
You'll blow up hard. You'll blow up hard. That's some true advice they're dropping here. It's incredible. It's so cool. One thing about solar, then, another rapid fire question is: what's the biggest misconception people have about your field?
The biggest misconception people have about solar is that It doesn't work. I mean, it's as simple as that. Like, a lot of people in the UK especially, they say, "Oh, solar doesn't work because it's
Brains, right?
cloudy." Exactly, that's it, and it's like, how many times do we have to say it? And while it's funny, honestly, Joe and I have brainstorming
Oh man.
sessions about how we can overcome these misconceptions. So it's like, oh, well, what if we film a shoot in cloudy weather and we show that the system is literally still generating? And but what we found is those ads just don't even work. We're yet to crack that. I don't know how I could ever convince someone that solar actually works in the UK. And that's coming from a marketing agency that markets solar, right? That I don't know if I could ever overcome that objection.
Man, that's that's ridiculous. That's so funny. That's so much tying into like the stereotypes of the UK. It's like never rains that you get like two weeks of sunlight during the entire year.
That's it, and people are so they misunderstand it so much. I mean, I've seen quotes for solar that return, £1,500 a year in savings, and you'll return your investment in under 5 years in some cases, or if it's commercial solar, under 3 years. And it's like the
Wow.
system's going to last for 25, 30 years. So it's a crazy good value proposition when you actually understand it.
No, that's a no-brainer. Maybe you'll manage to actually sell it to some
Yeah,
end clients of
I'll
there.
connect you to one of my clients.
Yeah, if they're watching. All right. So, last question of the rapid fire is something that we do as a closing ritual here on Perspective Talk, which is a guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing what it's about, and specifically about the future of marketing. So, the question from the previous guest is, what's one marketing tactic that's right now and in the near future working so well they're almost scared to give it away? Oh,
The marketing tactic that is
oh
working
wow.
so well that I'm scared to give it away is honesty, right? So the reason that is because so many people paint themselves as this perfect person, especially in like the online marketing space. It's like, oh, I'm generating this revenue. I've never made a mistake. I always do this. We're growing at this rate. Blah, blah, blah. But I hopefully I've been quite candid on this podcast. Like you're allowed to make mistakes. You don't have to be perfect. And
Yeah.
actually, by being honest and by saying where your flaws are and where your strengths are, people will believe your strengths more because they're like, okay, well, he's not good at everything, but he's pretty good at this one thing. Right. So, I think it's about actually being honest and people that can convey that. And the best thing about it is it's so easy to convey it because you don't have to lie, you don't have to pretend. Just be honest. Just say, this is what's working right now. And oh, this is the best one. Instead of saying I will, say I did. So, and this is what's
Mm.
helped me massively in our sales calls. So, I never say to someone, I will generate you 60 leads, 70 leads, 80 leads. I will generate you leads for £50. I will get you a cost per acquisition of this. I always say, I have. This is what I've done for previous clients. Like, straight up, this is the facts. This is our results. This is our stats. This is the data. It might happen for you. I hope it happens for you. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make it happen for you. But I'm not going to say it's going to because I don't control. Facebook could decide they're not going to let you advertise anymore, and then I've made you a promise I can't keep. Right? So just say what you have done rather than what you will do.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jude Cornish, seller on steroids. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leon.